The day has finally come. We are doing a color grading breakdown. So many of you guys have been asking for this for a long time, so I'm going to show you guys step by step how I would color grade a log clip from start to finish. So here's how I color grade my hockey footage. This clip is on the A7S III, shot in S-Log 3 from the Stanley Cup final just this past year. Forewarning, I am not a professional colorist. This is just something I've learned over the last 4 years of being a video editor, and this is just my methods, my techniques, my workflow. This might not work for everybody, might not work for you, so just keep that in mind. This isn't like a master class in color grading, it's just how I do it. Also, keep in mind that your results may be very different than mine, even if we were to color, both hockey video with the same techniques. I'm using a 10-bit camera with the A7S III that gives me a lot of flexibility in post when it comes to color depth. Making sure your exposure is right in camera when you're shooting, and also making sure you're using the right color temperature can also drastically give you better or different results depending on what you're going for, so keep that in mind next time you're shooting. Let's hop right in here and I'll show you guys exactly how I color grade it. First things first, you're going to notice 4 adjustment layers on top of my video layer. This is my main color grading structure. Each adjustment layer has a different purpose in this whole system. The bottom adjustment layer is primarily my basic corrections, whether that's highlights, shadows, exposure, blacks, whites, temperature, tint. That is what you're going to find on that first layer. The second layer is usually where I apply my creative LUT. This is usually where a bulk of the color grading happens. The third layer above that is the curves layer, whether that's my contrast curve or whether it's my hue saturation. That's where a lot of the color grade will go, as well as color wheels for, changing the shadows, changing the highlights, things of that sort. The top adjustment layer is where I add finishing touches if I really want to affect anything overall. Usually this is something like temperature, exposure for a very final touch. I usually add a LUT at the end to bring everything together at a lower intensity, and this is also where I sharpen my image at the end of a whole edit. So to start off, we're going to color grade these using my custom sports creative LUTs. We're going to go here with the overtime LUT, and these are both LUTs that add a creative grade but also a Rec 7 to 9 correction on top of it. So as you can see, once applying the LUT, we're in a pretty good place to start off here with our color grade. A big part of good color grade is exposing properly when you're shooting, and thankfully I think I did a pretty good job here. So right off the bat, we're going to start adjusting our highlights and shadows. I think the image was a little too blown out, and then we're going to start playing around with the temperature sliders here to make it a little warmer. It was a bit on the cool side, and adding some green back in there, and now we have a bit more of a controlled image. And a lot of color grading for me is really just adjusting the image until the exposure looks proper. It's not too dark, it's not too bright, and with hockey it can get pretty difficult, just obviously due to the ice surface being a bright white reflector. So I do take a lot of time here making sure my highlights aren't too blown out, making sure my shadows are decently balanced. For the next part, we're going to be playing around with our curves, and especially when you're shooting hockey, this is very important because right here I'm actually shooting through the glass, so there is a bit of a glare, and so here is where I really add some contrast, play around with the shadows and the tones of the image, and give it more punch and kind of get rid of that glossy look that shooting through glass can do when you're working in hockey. Got a bit of an S curve going here, which is a pretty traditional looking curve when it comes to color grading and adding contrast. We lift the blacks a little bit, play around with the midtones, and sometimes I even like to bring the whites down a little bit, similar to bringing the blacks up. I just like the look of it. It's been something I've been doing for a little while now. Now that my exposure, color correction, and contrast fixing is done, I'm going into the hue versus hue curve to play a little bit with the blues. I don't want to mess with them too much, but just a little bit of a smidge here just to get them a little bit more towards that teal. To wrap up the color grade, we're going to go to our color wheels here, and I messed around a little bit with the shadows. I do want them to be a bit on that cooler side, but this is a very, very light touch. Sometimes less is more when it comes to color grading. The last thing I do on my color grades recently is adding one of these finishing LUTs by Lens Distortions. This is not a paid ad. I just really like these LUTs. It adds a very subtle touch to bring the whole thing together. I usually apply these at like 50 to 40% on a different adjustment layer. It gives it a good solid overall look. And that was the before and after of this color grade. I hope you guys took something away from this video. I know it was a very brief overview of how I color grade something, but like I said, so many of you guys have been asking for so long that I hope maybe just this gives you some idea. Maybe in the future I'll do a bit more of an in-depth tutorial, but I hope for now this gives you guys a better idea as to how I color grade my hockey footage. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed it, please consider subscribing and giving it a like to help me in the algorithm. And as always, I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.